There is something powerful about telling a good story. Stories mean a lot to people, to everyone. Literally the whole world is one big continuous story. There's so many ways of telling it. In many African traditions, stories were told around fires. They were told to young children, to villages, to people in general. It was a way of communing. It was a way of getting in touch with each other. It was a way of entertainment. It was a way of passing on messages and lessons. It was a way of passing on knowledge. In the modern world, a lot has changed with recording devices, with technology, audio, video, advancements. In a world of ever-changing facts and situations, we need to figure out ways of doing better as passing on information to people. And while we're working on different models of infrastructure that's helpful to the human beings, we have mainly concentrated on mobility. And mobility now includes all the infrastructure we've been doing in safari lodges using containers. But in this case, we have worked with a company that's building something interesting, a mobile podcast studio. I think this story is better told by someone else.
My name's Jaiksana Soro. I'm a South Sudanese refugee here in Uganda. I'm actually a twice-over refugee, which means I've been here before. My parents fled the 21 years of conflict in South Sudan, and I ended up being born here in Uganda. Our family was able to return back to South Sudan when there was a peace agreement, but then in 2013 and 16, conflict erupted again, and we ended up being displaced back to Uganda. So I think there was a lot that I learned from my experience being a refugee, and one of the key things that for me I think was a lesson is that being a refugee is a very terrible thing that could happen to someone. You could find a situation where one day you have a home, you have a job, you have education, you have opportunities, and the next day you have none of those things. And when I came to Uganda, I sort of set out on a mission to basically be able to rewrite the narrative of people that come to the refugee camp and then end up living a life without dignity, without jobs, and relying on food rations from the UN agencies and all of that. And so we created an initiative called Platform Africa. The idea of Platform Africa is basically to create platforms, but basically for these platforms to enable refugees to convene, come together, be able to shape the future that they want to see for themselves, allow them to interact with technology, give them access to mentors, and basically help refugees with tools and equipment for them to tell their stories, connect with the world, and basically in the hopes that that process helps them become self-reliant and either give them opportunities to get employed or create their own employment opportunities. And so that's something that we've been doing for some time now. Through our work, we have trained up to 100 plus refugees on ICT skills. We are training refugees on podcasting and storytelling. And we're also doing peace building as part of our work because for refugees in Uganda, there's a close intersection between peace and media. And the reason is that in South Sudan, social media and the media in general has been used to fuel the conflict. And so there's a really blurry line between what is true and what is true, and what information could trigger conflict or not. And so basically our project has been training refugees on media literacy, but also media creation. So understanding how media works so that you don't become susceptible to fake news and hate speech, but also really being able to tell your own stories through mediums that we provide. And this, I think, brings us to why we are building the Lab Mobile mobile studio. I think the first time I met with Prosper was before COVID, and before Motive was actually set up. I was meeting with the colleague from Hive Collab. Brian was like, "Hey, there's this guy in town called Prosper. He builds stuff, interesting stuff, and you guys should check him out." So when we met with Prosper, we had no idea that we would work together. The idea was just for him to like show us his portfolio and the work that he does. But that also happened to be at the same time when we were getting this truck to Uganda. My friend Vicky was driving the truck from South Africa to Uganda alone throughout whatever customs and malaria and whatever to bring it here in Uganda. And so when we brought the vehicle, we actually parked here at Motive before any of this was built. And we had a small conversation about like, what this could become. Because the vehicle before then was just, call it a camper van. So it had a kitchen in it. It had a sink for washing dishes and all of that. It has a lot of cabins for utensils, but we also had a little bit a part that we stock and store books. So if you want to read on the go, and it has a bed. The idea initially was that we wanted to have a lab mobile or a vehicle basically that allows spontaneity, like spontaneous trainings wherever you go with refugees and all of that and so on. And for the most part, the question has been, what kind of equipment do you need to make this happen? What kind of setup? And how do you actually make this happen in a small vehicle? So that was a very big question to answer. And it took us a lot of thinking and prototyping, and also like working with Prosper, for example, remotely, because we're based in Rhino Camp, refugee settlement. And so last year, at the end of the year, we got support from the Response Innovation Lab Rail here in Uganda. And so we were able to put this into motion. We brought the vehicle into Kampala. And when I brought the vehicle, I literally had no expectation what it could become. Like, we have ideas of what we want it to be like. So we want, the track to be acoustic treated so that, you could record stuff in it and not have a lot of audio, ambience noise or whatever from outside affecting the quality of your work. We wanted to have, state-of-the-art equipment for basically doing the work. But at the same time, we want the space to function as a hybrid of a training space and a studio. So how do you make that happen? And so I think they got their knuckles cracking and started working on the work. And I think the first part they had to do was sort of to remove everything that we have in there, because we had, for example, floors of the vehicle that were rotting because poor wood that was used, but also water affecting it. And we also had, for example, most of the house, like I said, was camper van. It didn't have like the engineering for sound. And so they removed all of it out and then now sort of build a better version that have like acoustic foam built into it and all of that and so on. Right now, it's sort of at 90% complete. We have a really interesting setup going on in the studio. We have a table that is retractable. The idea is that if you're driving, because the function of the car is basically to remove the barrier that refugees experience in terms of access to skills. And for us in the refugee camps, one of the biggest problems is distance. So you're driving from one settlement to another or from one cluster to another, and it's bumpy and all of that. So for durability, we had like tables that you can fold off for easy transportation. And then we sort of also like went through a lot of iteration, like for what kind of seats we want to see in the vehicle. Initially, we just wanted to, have classic chairs made of wood put in there, but then we realized this wouldn't, be long lasting and durable. So instead, we took car seats, refurbished them, and now put them in the vehicle, so that it's sort of like almost a traditional vehicle with car seats, but at the same time, you can use it for podcasting and for producing sound or for sound design. I think as soon as we're done here, the next question is, what are the next steps? For us, I think the next steps come in two parts. One is that we want to really pilot the project that we have, take it to the refugee camps, actually set up trainings in the vehicle, and then really get refugees there to produce stories and have those go online. But I think in the process of that, we sort of want to be able to document the process, but also document like what is working, what is not working. Because for us, we don't really think of growth in terms of get this thing done and this is it, it's a final product. We think of things that we do as a process. So this could be, I think, a phase one of it, or we have a track that can be used for media production and media literacy. But how is it, can it be tested? Does it really do that? What kind of feedback can we get from the community about what could be done better? And then incorporate that feedback back into the track and build it. Our goal is really for this to function as a space for refugees to access skills. And for me, I'm really passionate about this project because I think my mother is a very strong woman. She's the reason why I'm standing in front of this camera. Because she brought us to Uganda. She enabled us to have education. The problem is that women account for over 86% of the refugee population in Uganda. But if you look at in terms of how much women are engaged in decision-making programs, how much they engage in trainings and programs that empower them, there's very little to limited opportunities that actually exist for them. And I think one of the problems is that it's distance as well. Women are not allowed to move long distances like young men in the camp have the opportunity and the freedom to. And so we think with this project, we're able to cut that barrier. We're able to take trainings where women gather and have them do trainings and have them play with the equipment and produce stuff and tell their stories, which I think is really important for us as refugees, but also I think for the growth of any society, it's important that women are equally empowered to take the lead. So for me, this is one of the reasons why I'm really passionate about this project.